So in case I forget, at the end of tonight's readings, this will be the last one of this practice week. Tomorrow it's still, the one pra isn't until Sunday, but tomorrow being Saturday, we don't usually do a talk and have the reading right before it. So this will be the last one of this week's readings. And in line with the Great Disciple theme, I was wanting to see about including some of the Buddha's foremost bhikkhuni disciples. And there was some sections in the Great Disciples of the Buddha with various bhikkhunis and lay women who were considered great disciples. But after looking at those and remembering that I had also talked about Visakha earlier this retreat, I decided maybe just to try and concentrate on teachings, a set of teachings from one of the bhikkhuni disciples, Dhammadina, who was considered to be the foremost bhikkhuni in being able to expound the Dhamma, teach the Dhamma. And the kind of the quintessential teaching is the Culavedalla Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 44, the shorter series of questions and answers, in which she is answering questions that are being peppered at her by the lay follower Visakha. And it's just, it's an incredible selection of questions and answers. It's very concise, to the point, and very useful set of teachings that comes up here. So I thought I'd read that and see how, I'm sure we'll be able to complete it. It's not a real long sutta, and we'll see what questions might come up from it. It'll either be a shorter reading or we'll go the whole length of time if people have a lot of questions, or I may include some other discourses also related to the bhikkhunis from the Bhikkhuni Samyutta. We'll see. So this starts out, "Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel's sanctuary. Then the lay follower Visakha went to the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina, and after paying homage to her, he sat down at one side and asked the following questions." So not to confuse this lay follower Visakha with the other one that's spelled differently but sounds similar, Visakha, the female disciple that I talked about earlier. But this male lay disciple, Visakha, I'll read the footnote that explains who he is and their relationship to each other. Visakha was a wealthy merchant of Rajagaha and a non-returner. Dhammadina, his former wife in lay life, had attained arahantship soon after her ordination as a bhikkhuni. She was declared by the Buddha the foremost bhikkhuni disciple in expounding the Dhamma. So she's an arahant and he has come to her still in the lay life, but is already a non-returner, so he's no slouch either, which you can tell by the kind of questions he's asking, which are obviously kind of well-thought-out, loaded questions that he probably is inclining towards knowing the answer to anyway, but he draws her out in this exposition. So, first question. "Lady, identity is said. What is called identity by the Blessed One?" "Friend Visakha, these 5 aggregates affected by clinging are called identity by the Blessed One. That is, the material form aggregate affected by clinging, the feeling aggregate affected by clinging, the perception aggregate affected by clinging, the formations aggregate affected by clinging, and the consciousness aggregate affected by clinging. These 5 aggregates affected by clinging are called identity by the Blessed One." Saying, "Good lady," the lay follower Visakha delighted and rejoiced in the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina's words. Then he asked her a further question. Lady, origin of identity is said. What is called the origin of identity by the Blessed One? Friend Visakha, it is craving, which brings renewal of being, is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, and craving for non-being. This is called the origin of identity by the Blessed One. Lady, cessation of identity is said. What is called the cessation of identity by the Blessed One? Friend Visakha, it is that remainderless fading away and cessation, the giving up, relinquishment, letting go, and rejecting of that same craving. This is called the cessation of identity by the Blessed One. Lady, the way leading to the cessation of identity, is said. What is called the way leading to the cessation of identity by the Blessed One? Friend Visakha, it is just this noble eightfold path. That is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Lady, is that clinging the same as these 5 aggregates affected by clinging? Or is the clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates affected by clinging? Friend Visakha, that clinging is neither the same as these 5 aggregates affected by clinging, nor is clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates affected by clinging. It is the desire and lust in regard to the 5 aggregates affected by clinging that is the clinging there. This next section is called Identity View. Lady, how does identity view come to be? And that's the translation of the one of the first 3 fetters, Sakaya Ditti. Sometimes translated as personality view, but I think actually identity view is a very nice translation myself. Here, friend Visakha, an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for true men and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, regards material form as self, or self as possessed of material form, or material form as in self, or self as in material form. He regards feeling as self, or self as possessed of feeling, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. He regards perception as self, or self as possessed of perception, or perception as in self, or as self as in perception. He regards formations as self, or self as possessed of formations, or formations as in self, or self as in formations. He regards consciousness as self, or self as possessed of consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. That is how identity view comes to be. So those are the kind of standard form for possible ways, variations that one can impose a sense of self on the 5 aggregates. And that is the basis of identity view. Lady, how does identity view come not to be? Here, friend Visakha, a well-taught noble disciple who has regard for noble ones and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, who has regard for true men and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, does not regard material form as self, or self as possessed of material form, or material form as in self, or self as in material form. He does not regard feeling as in self, or self as possessed of feeling, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. He does not regard perception as self, or self as possessed of perception, or perception as in self, or self as in perception. He does not regard formations as self, or self as possessed of formations, or formations as in self, or self as in formations. He does not regard consciousness as self, or self as possessed of consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. That is how identity view does not come to be. Next section is the Noble Eightfold Path. Lady, what is the Noble Eightfold Path? Friend Visakha, it is just this Noble Eightfold Path. That is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Lady, is the Noble Eightfold Path conditioned or unconditioned? Friend Visakha, the Noble Eightfold Path is conditioned. Lady, are the three aggregates included by the Noble Eightfold Path, or is the Noble Eightfold Path included by the three aggregates? The three aggregates are not included by the Noble Eightfold Path, friend Visakha, but the Noble Eightfold Path is included by the three aggregates. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood, these states are included in the aggregate of virtue. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, these states are included in the aggregate of concentration. Right view and right intention, these states are included in the aggregate of wisdom. So this is one of the canonical bases for the use of dividing up the Eightfold Path into a sort of threefold path, but aggregating those particular aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path into the aggregate of virtue, the aggregate of concentration, and the aggregate of wisdom. Next question. Lady, what is concentration? What is the basis of concentration? What is the equipment of concentration? What is the development of concentration? Unification of mind, friend Visakha, is concentration. The four foundations of mindfulness are the basis of concentration. The four kinds of right striving are the equipment of concentration. The repetition, development, and cultivation of these same states is the development of concentration therein. So the four kinds of right striving, also known as the four right efforts, are the equipment. It's what one uses as a basis or as a way to develop the concentration. And then the four satipatthana are the actual basis for the development of concentration, which I think is an important point because sometimes they get separated in some of the later teachings and are often treated as separate from each other. But here she clearly talks about the four foundations of mindfulness, or the four satipatthana, as actually the basis for the development of samadhi. Next question. Lady, how many formations are there? There are these three formations, friend Visakha: the bodily formation, the verbal formation, and the mental formation. So we chant those often, or at least two of them in the Anapanasati Sutta. The kaya sankhara, the bodily formation, the verbal formation, is not in the Anapanasati Sutta, but is one of the three, which is the vachi sankhara, and the mental formation, the chitta sankhara. But lady, what is the bodily formation? What is the verbal formation? What is the mental formation? In-breathing and out-breathing, friend Visakha, are the bodily formation. Applied thought and sustained thought are the verbal formation. Perception and feeling are the mental formation. But lady, why are in-breathing and out-breathing the bodily formation? Why are applied thought and sustained thought the verbal formation? Why are perception and feeling the mental formation? Friend Visakha, in-breathing and out-breathing are bodily. These are states bound up with the body. That is why in-breathing and out-breathing are the bodily formation. First, one applies thought and sustains thought, and subsequently, one breaks out into speech. That is why applied thought and sustained thought are the verbal formation. Perception and feeling are mental. These are states bound up with the mind. That is why perception and feeling are the mental formation. Sometimes in this particular application of the word formation, sankhara, it can be also translated as like conditioner, like the breathing is the bodily conditioner. It conditions the experience of the body, similar to thoughts conditioning the speech, and perception and feeling conditioning the mind. The attainment of cessation. Lady, how does the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling come to be? Friend Visakha, when a bhikkhu is attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, it does not occur to him, I shall attain the cessation of perception and feeling, or I am attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, or I have attained the cessation of perception and feeling. But rather, his mind has previously been developed in such a way that leads him to that state. Lady, when a bhikkhu is attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, which states cease first in him? The bodily formation, the verbal formation, or the mental formation? Friend Visakha, when a bhikkhu is attaining the cessation of perception and feeling, first the verbal formation ceases, then the bodily formation, then the mental formation. Lady, how does emergence from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling come to be? Friend Visakha, when a bhikkhu is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, it does not occur to him, I shall emerge from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, or I am emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, or I have emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling. But rather, his mind has previously been developed in such a way that it leads him to that state by prior determination. The bhikkhu who's pursuing that mind quality, that mind state, has predetermined when he wants to emerge from it. Lady, when a bhikkhu is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, which states arise first in him? The bodily formation, the verbal formation, or the mental formation? Friend Visakha, when a bhikkhu is emerging from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, first the mental formation arises, then the bodily formation, then the verbal formation. So reverse order. Lady, when a bhikkhu has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, how many kinds of contact touch him? Friend Visakha, when a bhikkhu has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, 3 kinds of contact touch him. Voidness contact, signless contact, desireless contact. Lady, when a bhikkhu has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, to what does his mind incline? To what does it lean? To what does it tend? Friend Visakha, when a bhikkhu has emerged from the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling, his mind inclines to seclusion, viveka, leans to seclusion, tends to seclusion. So the cessation of perception and feeling is a state that of meditation or of development of mind that usually, or that only occurs with non-returners and arahants, and it's kind of the logistical conclusion of developing all of the jhanas and then the formless attainments, and then follows on that according to the teachings. And that like the mind inclines to, when the bhikkhu has emerged from that, his mind inclines to viveka, and that would include all 3 kinds of the viveka, I would guess, the kaya viveka, seclusion of the body, chitta viveka, seclusion of the mind, freedom from the hindrances, obviously, and upadhi viveka, seclusion or separation from the constituents of existence, upadhi, the acquisitions, sometimes it's called, those things that tend to cause one to cause identification with the khandhas. These bhikkhus are separated from that, secluded from that, and that's where they dwell. Lady, how many kinds of feeling are there, Vedana? Friend Visakha, there are 3 kinds of feeling: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling. But lady, what is pleasant feeling? What is painful feeling? what is neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, whatever is felt bodily or mentally as pleasant and soothing is pleasant feeling. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as painful and hurting is painful feeling. Whatever is felt bodily or mentally as neither soothing nor hurting is neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Lady, what is pleasant and what is painful in regard to pleasant feeling? What is painful and what is pleasant in regard to painful feeling? What is pleasant and what is painful in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, pleasant feeling is pleasant when it persists and painful when it changes. Painful feeling is painful when it persists and pleasant when it changes. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling is pleasant when there is knowledge of it, and painful when there is no knowledge of it. I think that's really quite important in that it shows that the qualities of painful and pleasant change and morph very quickly as the particular form of contact changes. So, and that particularly the neither painful nor pleasant feeling, or what we would sometimes call neutral feeling, is actually pleasant when it is known, when there is mindfulness and clear awareness of that kind of neutral feeling. Then it has a tone of pleasantness to it. And when there's ignorance of it, and when there's no knowledge of it, there's a tone of painfulness, of unpleasantness. Underlying tendencies. Lady, what underlying tendency underlies pleasant feeling? What underlying tendency underlies painful feeling? What underlying tendency underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Underlying tendency being anusaya. Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust underlies pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion underlies painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance underlies neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Lady, does the underlying tendency to lust underlie all pleasant feeling? Does the underlying tendency to aversion underlie all painful feeling? Does the underlying tendency to ignorance underlie all neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust does not underlie all pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion does not underlie all painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance does not underlie all neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Lady, what should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling? What should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling? What should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Lady, does the underlying tendency to lust have to be abandoned in regard to all pleasant feeling? Does the underlying tendency to aversion have to be abandoned in regard to all painful feeling? Does the underlying tendency to ignorance have to be abandoned in regard to all neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, the underlying tendency to lust does not have to be abandoned in regard to all pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion does not have to be abandoned in regard to all painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance does not have to be abandoned in regard to neither pleasant nor painful feeling. Here, friend Visakha, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a bhikkhu enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. With that, he abandons lust, and the underlying tendency to lust does not underlie that. So pointing out that cultivating this kind of desire for a pleasant feeling that is unworldly is a wholesome development, wholesome use of that underlying tendency to experience something that is pleasurable but still not leading to more confusion, delusion. Here a bhikkhu considers thus: When shall I enter upon and abide in that base that the noble ones now enter upon and abide in? In one who thus generates a longing for that supreme liberation, grief arises with that longing as condition. With that, he abandons aversion, and the underlying tendency to aversion does not underlie that. So, similarly, as the first one, there's a kind of a wish for not something to be, and that wish for there not to be this confusion, this ignorance, as sort of a longing or a negative, one could say a negative state of mind, but it's a healthy one that leads in the direction of abandoning the unwholesome form of aversion. Here, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a bhikkhu enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. With that, he abandons ignorance, and the underlying tendency to ignorance does not underlie that. Lady, what is the counterpart of pleasant feeling? Friend Visakha, painful feeling is the counterpart of pleasant feeling. What is and the word counterpart explains in the footnotes here. Let me take a quick read on that, because it's a little bit confusing the way it develops. The word counterpart, patibhaga, is used to express the relationships of both opposition and supplementation. So in these pairs that they're going through, sometimes they're counterparts because they're opposites of each other, and sometimes they're counterparts because they work together or build on each other, supplement each other. What is the counterpart of painful feeling? Pleasant feeling is the counterpart of painful feeling. What is the counterpart of neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Ignorance is the counterpart of neither painful nor pleasant feeling. What is the counterpart of ignorance? True knowledge is the counterpart of ignorance. What is the counterpart of true knowledge? Deliverance, emancipation, is the counterpart of true knowledge. What is the counterpart of deliverance? Nibbana is the counterpart of deliverance. Lady, what is the counterpart of Nibbana? Friend Visakha, you have pushed this line of questioning too far. You were not able to grasp the limit to questions. For the holy life, friend Visakha, is grounded upon Nibbana, culminates in Nibbana, ends in Nibbana. If you wish, friend Visakha, go to the Blessed One and ask him about the meaning of this. As the Blessed One explains it to you, so you should remember it. Then the lay follower Visakha, having delighted and rejoiced in the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to her, kept her on his right. He went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, he sat down on one side and told the Blessed One his entire conversation with the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina. When he finished speaking, the Blessed One told him, "The Bhikkhuni Dhammadina is wise, Visakha. The Bhikkhuni Dhammadina has great wisdom. If you had asked me the meaning of this, I would have explained it to you in the same way that the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina has explained it. Such is its meaning, and so you should remember it." That is what the Blessed One said. The lay follower of Visakha was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. Okay, that ends that sutta. Pretty good stuff. Anybody have some thoughts or questions around it? Or anything else? Anthony's got a question over here.
So, as I understand it, with the arising of knowledge in the chain of dependent origination, there is a cessation of everything else, right? So, cessation of whatever consciousness and all that. But it seems to me that any person, can notice things, and any person can feel contact, whether an arahant or not. So, what is that cessation that happens as a result of arahantship, say? And how is that contact? Because obviously an arahant can feel contact. So what is the difference between the contact that ceases and the contact that anybody can feel?
Right. Yeah, I think it can be confusing sometimes if you think of the chain of dependent origination as like cessation, the cessation of ignorance, and the cessation of all the following factors as like the annihilation of them. And I'm pretty sure, and I can get Paul's treatise on this, but that it refers more to the cessation of all of those factors as influenced, as affected by the quality of ignorance, i.e., not knowing them in their true form. So that at least in this lifetime, as long as the khandhas are still intact, someone who's an arahant still experiences them, but with clear knowledge and knowledge of the way things are, and sees them in light of Dhamma. So the experience is there, but they're not affected by ignorance, clinging, craving, those qualities of mind.
So the cessation of suffering is the most important aspect of that. What is it that ceases, or why do we do all this, or why do we try to gain knowledge and understanding? And it's for that cessation of dukkha, and not just suffering, but just that sense of dis-ease, discontent, dissatisfaction, a feeling of incompleteness, or separation. So that's its purpose, and certainly the functional aspects of existence are still very much functioning.
It's akin, I think, to also like at the very beginning of this sutta, talking about the 5 aggregates affected by clinging, upadana khandha, in that when one realizes path and fruition, the khandhas still exist. There is still form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, but they're not affected by clinging. So they're not the upadana khandhas, they're just the khandha. So they're still there, but without the clinging. It's a similar kind of a thing.
It mentioned signless contact coming out of the sensation of perception and feeling. It made me think of Ajahn Chah's, there's a story of him seeing a teapot, but it wasn't a teapot. And I thought of that, but I was just wondering if there was anything that could be said about that.
Yeah, that would be because these are aspects of, in the same way that it talks signless contact, desireless contact, emptiness contact. It follows the insights into anicca, dukkha, anatta, and both because there's also like the signless samadhi, desireless samadhi, emptiness samadhi. There's the liberations, the signless liberation, the desireless liberation, the emptiness liberation, or emancipation, vimokkha. And so that these are realizations of so seeing through anicca, dukkha, anatta, and so that sort of the things that we create, signs and perceptions, and cling to as solid and real, don't have the same solidity to them, and they're seen through as opposed to being confused by them. Because sometimes people, there's plenty of people with mental problems who don't see things in the same way that everybody else does. But that's not what the Buddha is talking about. It's really a seeing through and insight into their true nature.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the first kinds of contact or experiences of contact on emergence from this very high, mental state are those 3 three factors, those 3 forms of
Yeah, I think that's really is very beautiful in that sense that the emergence from the depths of a liberating insight are peaceful and sublime, as opposed to I can't deal with this.
Turn it
I
off.
don't
Turn it
know.
off.
I don't want to know about it.
I'm going back.
I'm going back.
Okay, last chance. I think that's good. We'll call it an evening.